listening. Into the great listening I now walk. My heart, my mind, my body and my being open to space. Wind, rain or shine, I'll rest here. I'll rest as the Banksia rests, and I'll move like the wind moves. I'll sit as my fathers have, as their fathers have, as thousands of generations of my ancestral line have sat, side by side with life, watching, learning, listening. I'll sit on the earth from which I've come and breathe in the air that travels across vast distance. I'm grateful to have the chance to meet wild beauty, while most of the world simply fights to survive. I know that I'm a lucky one to be here in this place, to breathe in this space at this exact time. So I promise you life. I'll sit myself down, I'll be with my thoughts, I'll meet with this land, and I'll listen. Welcome back to the channel, good people. In this piece, I wish to speak about men's work and the paradox of men's work. I'll get to that in a second. That poem is a piece that I wrote. I'm now starting to assemble a bunch of poetry that people are sending in. I made a post recently and people are sending me poetry, but I'll be stitching them into future pieces. I've just returned from a radio check. I walked several kilometers up the coast, and a man that I'm supporting on a 10-day solo is a long way up the coast, and at 6 o'clock every night I'm checking in with him to make sure he's okay. He's out here on a pilgrimage of purpose and clarifying the frame of his life. And as I was walking back along the coast, and I'll cut into this piece and some footage along the coast, as I was walking back, I was pondering the paradox of men's work. And I'm inviting you to consider this, for those men who are out there at the moment listening to this, to consider this for yourself as an inquiry. You know, how does this land for you, and how does what's your experience of the emergence of men's work in culture, its current position, and where it's going? So the intention of this piece is a reflective piece, a contemplative piece, and a piece that I hope is of value for men out there that are exploring the path of healthy masculinity. So the question really is, you know, what is healthy masculinity? So a little piece about my experience with men's work in 2001. I first attended a men's gathering in Tasmania and was blown away by the level of vulnerability available in that space, and the honesty and the raw emotional authenticity of men and sincerity. And maybe more than anything else, I was blown away by the tenderness in men when coming together with intention. I've been part of that men's gathering now for 21 years, and it's been an enormous gift in my life. Amazing. One of the things that I'm noticing over the course of time is that in comparison to when I grew up as a younger fella, the young fellas that are coming online now, the young 18-year-old men, are experiencing life, in my experience, in a much different way than we did. When I grew up, vulnerability as a young man was frowned upon. The only time fellas would be vulnerable is when the beer goggles are on, when dudes are pissed or under the influence of alcohol or drugs of some sort. But one of the things that I'm noticing now is that young men are so much more open and so much more intimate with one another, and that's now not uncommon. That the feminine, if you like, in men is well and truly coming online culturally, and I celebrate that enormously. The counterpoint to that is that if I was to consider right now that if for example war hit Australia and paratroopers dropped in from aircraft, my concern would be that the masculine is starting to fade out now in culture. There's so much news now about the toxic masculine and the impact that the toxic masculine is having in regard to sexuality, in regard to domestic violence, and we've all seen the news in regard to toxic masculinity. My quick take on that is that toxic masculinity is something that I feel has always been part of culture and is by and large massively exaggerated in the media, and the media are little more than mouthpieces of hyperbole to paint a picture that isn't accurate across the average man. There is no doubt that toxic masculinity occurs in our culture, and for all of those instances when it does, it's shit and it's shameful, but it's also systemic and it's incredibly complex. An enormous reason for toxic masculinity being part of our culture. It always has been part of our culture, let's face it, but in the absence of strength and guidance and rites of passage that guide young men into adulthood in a way that is done very skillfully, then what can we expect? Young men are stepping into their feminine through alcohol, stepping into that space of the expression of vulnerability and raw emotion under the influence of drugs. And so the paradox that I see in men's work at the moment is, yes, I think toxic masculinity is a thing, but I think it's a tiny thing in scale, and I'd love to see a much more balanced perspective of masculinity being portrayed in media, and that's a big part of why I've started this channel, is to tell the good news stories about men, that the vast proportion of men are amazing men just trying their best, and even those guys who have screwed up are probably screwing up due to intergenerational challenges, shall we say, and or trauma of some description. So how can we take responsibility for that? How can we as a culture take responsibility for the absence of systemic support that enables men to transition into adulthood in a healthy way? Of course, we can't take responsibility for a man's actions, but we can take responsibility partially for the culture that is fertile soil for shitty behaviours. But the thing that I want to talk about more specifically is that the defining feature that I'm now seeing inside the Tasmanian culture of men's work is one that I would refer to as the healthy feminine, where men are really encouraged to be in a safe space to express vulnerability. And I feel like that's an essential stage on the path of a complete experience of healthy masculinity. That in fact, for me, the healthy masculine encompasses the warrior, encompasses the wild man, encompasses a man's capacity to symbolically have a frame in his life of clarity, of vision, mission, purpose, legacy. And that frame in symbolic terms is kind of like a ship on an ocean. That if a man can have that level of clarity in regard to his life direction, a business plan, if you like, a life map for his life, that the frame of the masculine is so strong that when emotional content arises, much like a ship on the ocean, a man can navigate. His ship is strong enough to be able to weather the storm being the internal feminine. The challenge and the tweak that I'd like to see with men's work is that men's work begins to encompass a lot more focus around purpose and a lot more focus around clarity of understanding, vision, mission, purpose and legacy. Understanding and having an embodied experience of resilience through experiences like this man is undertaking, shooting solo for multiple days and learning to be alone. One of the shadow sides of the men's movement is that I see that often for over 20 years, I've witnessed it a lot, men coming to these gatherings for a kind of contact high. Like, you know, the gathering is there so that I can process my stuff. That's not what I think a gathering should be for. A gathering, in my experience, should be for men to come together to refine their purpose and, if necessary, process any emotional content that's sabotaging it. Not to come together in the absence of a clarity of purpose and then just be swimming in an eternal feminine and an eternal lack of direction, lack of focus, lack of vision, and then be wondering why I'm in emotional chaos so much. Ironically, the greatest version of masculinity that I see on the planet at the moment is mixed martial arts. The UFC and the multiple versions of mixed martial arts that are now online across the planet. And when I refer to that, I'm referring to that in both women and men, that the healthy masculine is the frame via which all martial arts across all time stance, enables me to move, not being dominated by emotional space, enables me to have control of emotion rather than control of aggression, rather than aggression controlling me. I feel like the paradox of men's work is that at this stage and at this period of our lives and of our culture, the healthy masculine needs a lot more focus on frame, on clarity of these items that I'm discussing, purpose, mission, vision, legacy, in order that a man, when he departs a men's gathering, has that level of organizational strength internally and doesn't require the men's gathering to prop him up, but rather the men's gatherings to support his voyage and to support him being crystal clear about his voyage. Because in the absence of that, a man's left swimming in the ocean of the feminine and not clear on the direction that the ship is going. This is my take on men's work in its current form. I've lost interest in sitting in fluorescent rooms with men, and I see that it's a really important thing. But I really feel like it depends upon where a man's at. I'm personally wanting the challenge of being with men in nature, so that above and beyond the interpersonal dynamics and challenges that are going on in a man's daily life, we're also exposing ourselves to elements so that we're building resilience. One of the things that I love that I'm seeing around the place now is men that are swimming together at the beach, for example, or hunting together, or performing mixed martial arts. I'm watching a bunch of men's movements around the world now, including mainland Australia, where men are coming together and they're practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the beach, and then they're checking in. This is a form of masculinity that inspires me far more than simply the check-in process, where I'm encouraged to identify what's going on in my emotional space, but not encouraged into the purpose work. I feel like the two things need to go hand in hand, and I'm not seeing a lot of the purpose work. And I'd love to. I'm in the process now of the journeys and the rites of passages that I run one-on-one are absolutely amazing, and I love them with all of my heart, but I can only do so many of those. So I'm in the process now of organizing an online course called the Wild Man Challenge, which is oriented around, independent of me designing a whole bunch of content for men to get together with their mates and shoot off into landscape together, supporting each other on solos, and giving away all of the insight that I have in regard to this purpose work in Wild Place, in order that other men can get that and make it readily available for the average man. But that men can do that with friends, with mates, to come together as allies of purpose. And miles above and beyond myself, this work can expand. Part of my process is really that feeling of loneliness and isolation in this work, that I'm the only man currently in Tasmania doing this work in wild places. And if you're a man and you're out there and you're really called to this work, I'm deeply motivated to offer support and training for other men to step into this work and step into a role of supporting men to solo in nature and identify vision, mission, purpose, and legacy. So if that's you, please reach out, because I feel like that's, from an evolutionary point of view, an enormous missing and a gap that needs filling. And we need as many men stepping into Jedi as possible to then support their families, their kids, their mates, their communities and their workplaces to undertake the same journey. This is me signing off from this gorgeous little place as the sun goes down on the Tarkine coast. Super grateful for your watching. Please subscribe to the channel, share it around. This channel is designed to be of service to the community, so that the work that I can do can shoot out into the world, miles above and beyond those select privileged few that have the ability to come and join me on a solo journey like this, or a group journey, the likes of which I do over New Year's Eve in the forest. Thanks heaps for watching. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next one. Ciao for now.